It's been an absolute privilege to review so many great indie games over the past 4 years for y'all here at I Dream of Indie Games, over 1,000 of them in fact. So as you can imagine, not every single game can be a winner unfortunately. Today we're here to talk about 5 of the most shockingly disappointing and atrocious games that we've ever reviewed here at the channel. You know, it's a little bit of a shock to me though. If you haven't yet checked out our Patreon, head on over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames to gain Discord access, exclusive live streams, early ad-free shows, and so much more. Your community is waiting. We have to go back a good 3 years now, very early on in the channel, for this first stinker that I came across. It was a game on the PlayStation 4 called Outbreak, the New Nightmare, and honestly, this is still kind of a special review to me. It's one of my favorites that I've done. It was completely off the cuff. There was no script whatsoever. I was just kind of winging things back then and seeing what stuck. One thing's for sure though, at that early stage of my YouTube career, this was by far the worst game that I had encountered up to that point. The basic idea behind Outbreak the New Nightmare was for the developer to create a Resident Evil Outbreak style online game experience. Now if you're not familiar with 2004's Resident Evil Outbreak, the idea was to, yes, bring Resident Evil in the traditional survival horror way into an online cooperative environment where you would work together with other people in order to solve various puzzles. It really was a matter of technology not being far along enough for this game to really work out the way they probably wanted it to. The online connections were terrible. I mean, I remember playing the PS2 version and I didn't exactly have high speed back then, so you were royally screwed. I don't know what I was thinking even trying, but the core concept behind the game was really cool. I like the idea of bringing Resident Evil online and working together to solve puzzles and to go on these different scenarios. So then you look at Outbreak the New Nightmare on the surface level and you say, yeah, online servers have gotten better, connections are faster now, maybe this could work out. That's a big old nope, because this game is just awful, or at least it was, because like all the games today, I'd like to hear from you if they were patched down the road. Let me know in the comments below. Still, I'm not sure there was enough patching in the whole wide world to fix this one. Outbreak the New Nightmare was not shy about being a copycat game, as of course, it revolved around an outbreak that wiped out the city and led to a lot of zombies taking over. Just the way the story was told in this title kind of gave me a red flag, as you got these terrible static images and text. Not very appealing. But alright, budget restraints and all that, I get it. The developer did go as far as to include 2 different control schemes, a more modern one, and then there's the classic tank controls, but they're both truly awful, not helped by a horrendous frame rate and some god-awful screen tearing. The frustrating part about Outbreak the New Nightmare is that it did include a lot of different modes, it had some neat ideas, but unfortunately they just forgot to make a fun game. The engine is just dreadful to the point where you don't even want to play it at all, regardless of how many modes there are. Awful controls, terrible map design, and poor visuals all lead to a product that really irritated me and was the first terrible game that I reviewed here at I Dream of Indie Games. I mean truly terrible. You'll have to let me know how has it come along, if you did actually try it. As I tried to hold my composure, I couldn't help but burst out into laughter at one point when I engaged one zombie in Rock'em Sock'em Robots, taking turns throwing weak uppercuts at each other in an eternal struggle to score a double KO. As you wander the game's poorly designed maps and engage with the childlike combat system, you may also find yourself picking up different guns. Alright, if you thought that one was a nightmare, well, you haven't seen anything yet. This next one comes from Nape Games, and honestly, they could have made this list twice if I'm being real with you. For their other game, Recnum Cherry Dreamland, which was pretty close to as terrible as the one I'm going to talk about next, and this game is called Ploid Saga. Ploid Saga is a weird thing to start with because it's a series I never heard of, and yet it initially launched with 3 games in this package and eventually added a 4th game as well. The games consist of 2D platformers and arcade-style shooters. It's almost like the developer was already trying to build this massive universe for something that hadn't gotten popular yet for some reason. And while that's ambitious, I really feel like they would have been better served to just build one great game and then kind of branch off from there. Let's talk about the 2D platformer in this one though. Well, it is very, very basic. Clearly inspired by some of the Mega Man games, it's so freaking easy. This game has some of the stupidest AI I've ever come across, particularly on the bosses, which you can literally just hop around and shoot. They don't present any challenge whatsoever. The Mega Man games really shined with their excellent level design, and you just won't get that here. The levels are so boring, there's no detail to them, there's no real strategy, there's no real great platforming. They just go on, and then you fight a boss that does nothing. It's about as much fun as introducing a new partner to your parents for the first time. Hoping the arcade shooter portion of this game is better? Forget about it. Awful level design, and the same boss every freaking time you get to the end of a level. Unbelievable. Ploid Saga is about as enjoyable as going to the dentist to get a tooth pulled. You should probably check out the full review if you want to learn more, because I just don't really have anything else to say about it. It's not good. By the way, there are links to every game we discussed today in the description box below. Full reviews, old and new. Some of them are pretty old, so forgive the crappy quality. I couldn't help but be reminded of some of the great collections of the past while I was playing through Ploid Saga, Mario All-Stars, Ninja Gaiden Trilogy. These were games that were really good to begin with. Unfortunately, that isn't the case for Ploid Saga, a game that offers up 4 experiences, yes, but forgets to make any of them fun. So this next game, I have to be completely honest, I forgot entirely that it existed. That's how many games we've reviewed here, and that doesn't bode well for it. But looking back on it now, by God, what a cool idea that was just completely botched. It's a fighting game with all indie characters. Bounty Battle sounded like a dream come true for this channel, but it turned into a horror show pretty quickly. First off, you really don't get much of an explanation as to why these indie characters have come together. I believe a vortex opens up going off of memory or something like that, and they just all get drawn together. Indie games and a lot of these characters are known for their rich narratives and the cool lore behind them, so why didn't the developer take advantage of that? Oh, I know why, because this is a complete cash grab. Unfortunately, I haven't heard much about a sequel, so I don't think the cash was grabbed. It's really a little bit embarrassing in a lot of ways because you have some really iconic franchises included for Bounty Battle, including Dead Cells and Guacamelee, just to name a few. But they're all tossed into this really broken fighting game with one of the worst fighting game engines I've ever come across. I'm still not quite sure why your character starts glitching out as your health goes down. It just looks ridiculous. There's also this weird bounty point system tied to the game where you can unlock other features, and it falls completely flat. Bland environments, poor special moves, boring, boring, boring. That's the name of the game with Bounty Battle. My hope is that this game didn't scare off every single indie developer into bringing a bunch of cool indie characters into one cool game, but sadly, this wasn't that cool game, and maybe we'll never get it now. For now, we didn't have an indie Krampus back then, but rest assured, it would be in that playlist if we did. Bounty Battle is an absolute turd that you should avoid at all costs. Characters and worlds that are represented in this game deserve so much better. What a disappointment, what a letdown. This one just feels like a kick in the nuts. The next game on this list really caught me by surprise because it previewed pretty well when we played it on Steam, and then we got a review copy for the Switch version. I'm still not sure to this day if the game was broken across all platforms, as it's also available on PlayStation and Xbox, but the Switch version was one of the worst experiences I ever had reviewing a title. It was in a pretty broken state. Monster Crown in itself was not egregiously bad. I was not a fan of the writing, and it was pretty generic as far as monster collectathons go, but it did have some redeeming qualities if I could have got it to run correctly. The Switch is pretty notorious for some bad indie ports over the years, and this was probably the worst one I played on that console. For one, almost every other step I took, the game would just do these huge skips. Even outside of the technical issues that were present on the Switch version, the combat just felt really slow and boring. I can also remember the sudden difficulty spikes coming up pretty much out of nowhere and just really turning me off from wanting to play anymore. And yet, if there's a game that's gonna have a redemption story on this list that was perhaps patched, I unfortunately wasn't able to keep up with things because here at I Dream of Indie, it's off and on to the next game. I think it could be Monster Crown, just because there was potential, if you could get the game to run and function properly, for it to at least be an okay Pokemon-style game. So let me know in the comments below if Monster Crown ever got there in the end. As I walked about the game's maps, my character would skip frames entirely, which led me to eventually having a massive headache. When I tried to rest at a campfire at one point, the game locked up completely. Was I supposed to wait for the sun to rise? In another instance, my character was stuck in place entirely, and I totally lost it at that point and did perform a rage quit. Thank goodness you can save the game at any time, because if I didn't have that option, I would have lost a lot of progress, and I would have gave up a lot sooner. With my spirit broken, battered, and beaten from the game's horrible performance on my aging Switch, I looked for answers by testing the handheld mode. Sadly, I have to pick on the Nintendo Switch one more time before I get out of here with this list, but I feel like this is maybe the worst game I ever had to review here at the channel, and it was Metal Tales Overkill, the Switch version in particular, though I doubt this game was much better on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC for that matter. The only thing headbanging about this game was me banging my head against the wall. Motherfucker! This 3D roguelike guitar shooter is way out of tune if you catch my drift. The controls are terrible. The graphics look like original Wii graphics. And it by far holds the record for, as far as I can think back, the longest load time I have ever come across. If you go back and watch that review, I'll have a link in the description box below, you'll find a segment in that review. Well, here, I'll just show you a little bit of it. It's not going to take very long for your sane anger to start rising once you hit the game's first load screen, which feels like waiting for Guns N' Roses to make a new album. The third level of this game loaded for so long that I literally got up, took a dump, finished, washed my hands, came back, and it was still loading. Don't believe me? Here's the load screen for level 3 in real time with no edits. Even beyond all the technical hurdles, this game doesn't look good, it doesn't play good, it doesn't sound good. I mean, there's some cool music on here, but I didn't really get to enjoy that back when I played the game because it completely glitched out. I would have been really pissed off if I was any of those musicians that contributed music to this title. In the end, this was an absolutely terrible review for me. I hated playing it, and I'm glad it's over now and I can kind of just look back and laugh a little bit about the whole situation. That's gonna do it for this list, folks, but we're gonna be back with more of these. I figure we'll change the mood and get back to the positive side of things for a while before we delve into the deeper, darker side of I Dream of Indie review lore. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Thank you so much for supporting independent content, and I will see you on the channel.